These are our lands, and no one can take them from us!
Good morrow, young squires, it's Jules here, and recently I've been donning a half-ton of armour and trading blows in Ubisoft's latest Clash & Clang title, For Honor. But the question on everyone's helmets is the game a shining sword cleaving its competition in two, or more of a poke with a butter knife? Well, let's find out. Taking place in a medieval fantasy setting, For Honor focuses on the ever-growing conflict between three factions: the Legion, aka Knights, the Warborn, aka Vikings, and the Chosen, aka Samurai. At first, the setting is slightly obtuse, with there seemingly being little rhyme or reason as to why these warriors are fighting. But therein lies the point, as when the narrative is expanded through a sizable campaign mode, it becomes clear that these factions have been warring for so long that they've almost forgotten why. Enter Apollyon, the female leader of the Legion and apparent airsoft mask enthusiast who seeks to keep this war going forever, as she believes that it's only through conflict that the strongest examples of humanity will show themselves. Players take control of the blood-filled boots of warriors from each faction, and each slither of story they take part in builds to this overarching plot of betrayal, chaos, and let's not forget, a large amount of killing. That being said, I can't say I particularly enjoyed the single-player experience. The lore of For Honor is barely explained to the player, and often left me feeling very adrift from the story it was trying to tell. Bafflingly, the game decides to hide information and exposition in the observable points you can find in the levels. Now, I'm not against this per se, but when said information is about the war I'm fighting and who the hell these people are, then I consider that to be actually worth knowing and should be easily accessible. I also found the characters very shallow and for the most part uninteresting, just a series of men and women who grumble about strength, valor and the like without any shred of conviction. It also doesn't help that we never see their faces, so for all I know they could look as bored as they sound. But before you admonish my thoughts here, trust me when I say that in nearly every other area, this game shines. Visually speaking, the game is a blood-stained love letter to war itself. Armour gleams and glistens, blades are covered with a look of aged steel, and the environment seemed to sing with what can only be described as a destroyed beauty. In fact, the best thing about merging these three distinct factions is that the developers were able to take us on a tour of chaos. From ruined churches to Viking strongholds to remote temples, every map I played looked the part and was filled with interesting features, like boiling hot springs for kicking people into, ledges to throw people off of, and fires to lob bodies on to burn them. In case you hadn't guessed by now, I love the shoving feature of this game. But that's not to say I loved all of the visual touches, as there is a very confusing clash of styles when it comes to For Honor's menus and loading screens, in which it drops the fantasy medieval setting and instead opts for a rather dull modern look, which doesn't sit very well with me. I also have to admit I'm not a huge fan of the minimal soundtrack, which seems to be comprised of short samples which loop endlessly and seem to cut in and out as soon as the action starts or ends with little fade in. You might think this is a small complaint, but that drum beat in the multiplayer lobby is terrible once you've heard it loop for about 50 times between every match. But you know what? All of these little niggles I've mentioned before simply fall into the background when you actually begin fighting, as it's in this aspect For Honor is an absolute joy. The open beta was my first chance to flex my dueling muscles, and as a seasoned chivalry player I immediately threw my character's muscle-bound body against all sorts of sharp resistance. And it's here I got a firm wake-up message. This was quite unlike any sword and steel combination I'd seen. It's slower and more methodical, with a combat system designed to not only make one-on-one encounters extremely tense, but also give you the ability to fend off multiple attackers with flexible counters and parries. The best way to describe how For Honor plays is just that it feels right. It feels good to hunker down and trade blows with enemies, and it feels even better to turn their heads into the contents of a jam jar. That's jam, by the way. Each class has their own traits, which makes them specific to certain situations and playstyles. Specialist traits like damage absorption and increased speed can be used to help turn the tide and can be personalized, along with nearly every piece of armor and weaponry in the extensive customization options available. This plays perfectly into the game's central idea of picking your battles well. Wading into the midst of a group of NPCs and Dominion might seem like a great idea, but in all that chaos you might not be able to spot enemies flanking you. Therefore, scouting, working in pairs, and generally taking your time are the best way to win and simply stay alive. But you'll have many chances to die, as there are tons of different ways to play online. There's one-on-one duels or two-on-two brawls, larger scale battles with NPC warriors helping you vie for control points, or elimination and skirmish battles which fall somewhere in between. Games are fairly quick to get into, and while I can report of hard crashes which plagued me throughout my online experience, when I was actually playing I saw nor felt lag of any significance, which in this type of game would have been a real codpiece crusher. All this adds up to be an impressive package which will cater to whatever level of bloodlust you are looking to satiate. You can lose hours in each mode cutting down foes, striking opponents from above, or as I mentioned before, simply pushing them off ledges. So here are 3 things that you need to know about For Honor. Firstly, do not buy this game solely for its advertised story mode. It's not the emotional powerhouse I think the devs were hoping for, and it's hampered by linear gameplay and non-linear storytelling which falls unfortunately flat. Secondly, learn your character's traits and unlockable feats. While you might be able to claw your way through fights with simple block and attack functions, you'll get so much more from this title with a good understanding of strengths and weaknesses. Plus, don't be afraid to switch up your hero from time to time, as you might be surprised at how much of a difference reach or speed can make. And finally, For Honor nails its combat system, bringing an experience which makes you feel empowered even when defending. It's a joy to bash in brains as much as it is to parry and backstab, and I've really not come across a title in which new players are able to hold their own with confidence against the more seasoned warriors so well. It really is a blast. So that's For Honor. It's not perfect, but it's done what many games fail to achieve: root themselves in a good idea and build an extremely solid foundation on top of it. Online events, the obligatory season pass, and the chance to master each class exist to keep player investment high, and I will certainly be keeping my blades polished for a while to come.